Are high-interest credit cards or personal loans weighing you down? Unlock gives homeowners a smarter option. With a home equity agreement, you can tap into your home's equity for cash today, and there are no monthly payments. Here's how it works. Unlock provides funds upfront and in exchange shares in a portion of your home's future value. That means you keep control with the flexibility to use your equity your way. Pay off bills, invest in home improvements, or set aside savings for peace of mind. For thousands of homeowners, Unlock has been the key to moving forward without the pressure of another payment. Put your equity to work for you. Visit unlock.com to learn more about a home equity agreement. That's unlock.com to learn more.
Terms and conditions apply. Not all homeowners will qualify. Not available in all states. Actor Portrayal. Home equity agreements are offered by Unlock Home Equity Solutions, Inc. In certain states, NMLS number 2657081. Visit www.consumeraccess.org for more info.
Thank you for tuning in. It's time for another amazing guest show on Eternal Affairs Truth Radio. Please consider supporting our work at our website, eternalaffairsmedia.com. Sit back and relax and enjoy the show. Please subscribe and keep coming back. You're going to know God did it.
Well, hello, everyone. This is Zach with EA Truth Radio.
Thank you for tuning in.
Sorry. I didn't click it hard enough. I did that last week too. My bad. Anyway, this is Zach with EA Truth Radio, brought to you by internalaffairsmedia.com. Online for 15 years, faithfully publishing the truth, powered by the truth since 2010. Our guest today is Gabe Doe. Gabe is the founder and president of Good Brew, and he's here to tell us about your gut health. But before we jump into that, Gabe, do you mind if I just take a moment to pray?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Excellent. All right. Father God, thank you for this time that we have together. Thank you for our guest this evening. Hopefully he brings some great insight to people that are listening. Help the ears be open that need to be open, and everybody take it in as they should. In your precious name, amen. All right. Well, I'm excited to get the show started. So please hit the subscribe and like and share buttons to everybody you can. Support us and our guests with the links. They'll be in this description. Gabe, where you coming live to us from? Why don't we go back? Where are you originally from? And then tell us your story, how you became the Good Brew guy.
Yeah, well, I'll give you the short version of it. So, because the long version is too long, but we need to talk about the gut health and why it's so important. But yeah, Good Brew is it's been a work in progress that started many years ago, because I went to school at East Carolina University, and years ago I was working in the Office of Technology Transfer when I was in graduate school, and we had a little conversation about this time. This is before everything that you're hearing about gut health now. It's becoming kind of mainstream, but back then it wasn't, and it was sort of a fringe theory a guy had that multiple sclerosis was related to the gut. And the reason he said he came up with that was because he looked at the correlation between places in the world that didn't have high levels of MS and places that did. And there was obviously with that, this assumption that was related maybe to vitamin D and sun exposure. But this guy took a different approach, and he looked at it as they hadn't had as much exposure to the things that have killed the microbiome in Western society. And now that was quite a long time ago, but now that is actually a very well received theory. In fact, it's actually so well received that it's looked at as part of the complex of things that happens for people who acquire MS and other autoimmune diseases. It may not be, a one-to-one. It may not be. It may be a multiple factors, and the gut microbiome seems to be one factor in that disease, as well as other autoimmune diseases, Alzheimer's, other forms of dementia. Many things are related to the gut health. But anyhow, we had that conversation, and then I was working on some other things in the food industry and seafood at that time. But I was at an Institute of Food Technologists conference. And there was some things there that are now part of Good Brew, an inulin fiber that nobody was using at the time. Right. And I saw that as a prebiotic, and which now there's some really good research on inulin fiber and using natural fibers versus like the wheat dextrins and corn dextrins and things that are in the biggest selling items. The biggest fibers on the market today are sold by big pharma, and they're not even the kinds of fibers that we would normally get in nature. So at that time, I identified the inulin fiber, and then what was the spore-forming probiotic that we use in Good Brew today. The company had it's a natural probiotic, but they had just cultured their own strain. And because it was a spore form, I understood how it could be used in a more convenient way. And even at that time, I'd already started to learn that many of the probiotics that people were, and this was the market was very small back then, didn't survive well through the stomach. But the spores, they spore forming probiotics, we would get those in nature through the soil, like scavenging and digging up plants. And they're transitory probiotics, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, but identified for whatever reason, being an entrepreneur at that time, that we could maybe create something that would be really easy to use and work. However, I created a product at that time that was really hard to make, and so I had to go away from that, and I went off and worked on some other things. And then only a few years ago did I really come back to making Good Brew in this very simple 2-ingredient form, no preservatives, no sweeteners, just probiotic and prebiotic in a symbiotic, what they call symbiotic product. And it's really convenient because you can use it in your coffee, amongst other things. You can't do that with other probiotics.
Right.
And it survives the stomach and the stomach acid, which is really important to get through to the lower intestine, where we really need to support our gut microbiome. So this product that I created is both, it has over 25 clinical studies just on the probiotic alone. There's tons of research now on the inulin fiber, and then there's even a much more broader set of literature and research now that's been done on the microbiome in general and how important it is to all these different aspects of our health. So I'm originally from North Carolina. We make our product in Denver. I'm in Denver. I'm in Longmont, Colorado right now at a hotel because we're doing a production run down in Denver. So I'm kind of running around doing things, and my mind's a little bit scattered. I'm sorry for that, but
it's okay. You're fine.
So the gut is so important. We have lots of reorders. We're a small company. We're a growing company. We have many happy customers, and there's so much to talk about. And so I'll let you speak for a few minutes here, and then we can talk about gut health and whatever interests you. Yeah.
I do have a couple questions for you. I'm going to play ignorant on it. I mean, I take a lot of supplements, and I do take probiotics and prebiotics, and I take fiber. I was told that what is it, Philian husk, or I don't know how to say it, but that's not the good fiber. Yeah, you want to use a different type of fiber. But what I've learned in doing my research as I get older, because as a kid you don't care. I eat old iron gut. I ate whatever I wanted. It didn't matter. But I learned that everything health related, and I'm going to be bold and say, from what I've understand, 100% of your sicknesses and your healthiness comes from your gut. And if you can turn your gut around, that's where you can extend your life and get rid of, like, I had a friend who had major stomach problems. He changed his eating style and started taking probiotics and prebiotics, and he doesn't have any more stomach issues. And first of all, he got rid of all, like, he's a food nut now. Like, he grows his own food, and he's done a lot of research. There's just so much stuff out there, and we could probably go on for hours on that. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me, this is where I'm ignorant, what is the difference between a probiotic, a prebiotic, an antibiotic, or any other what is the difference, and why do you need the different ones?
Right. So think about, first of all, a way to start thinking about it is, just create a model in your mind and thinking about your gut like it's its own ecosystem. I mean, that's actually a word for it. It's like the biome, or we're a holobiont. We're like a meta-organism, and the gut microbes and the microbes all over our body for that matter, but especially the gut microbes are like inhabitants of our biome, of our body, like a forest or like the rainforest. And those organisms, the microbes that live in our gut, play a major role in our bodies, in our systems, and in this biome. And just like and there's a reason for why back in the day when people first started studying this a long time ago, they used the term flora. Sometimes you'll hear the term gut flora, because flora relates to plants.
Yes.
Microbes aren't really plants. They're they're bacteria, and as well as there's some fungi living in there, and a few other microorganisms like protists and that sort of thing. But primarily we're talking about bacteria. But they use the term flora because it's very appropriate. It's like you have a forest growing in your gut, and so they need nutrients. That's the prebiotic. Just like if you have a garden in your backyard, you got to put the things in that soil that grow the types of things that you want to grow, which includes both specific nutrients, but also things that we would call like soil amendments, right? So things that just create the right kind of environment for the right kind of thing, and the wrong kind of environment for the wrong kind of thing. And so the prebiotic is what feeds those microorganisms, that feeds the flora, and in a good way, right? So if you eat a lot of sugar, you're going to feed microbes that like sugar, and then actually those microbes will actually will send signals to your brain to feed it more sugar. So it's a vicious cycle, a vicious loop, right? So the insoluble fiber like inulin, which is found in nature and fruits and things, is the kind of fiber that our gut microbes, the good microbes, have really flourished on, since humans have been walking the earth, and that's what you want to feed them, and to help establish the kind of environment in the system that we have that we want to be positive. So the probiotics are the good bacteria. The pro means good. Pre is the food for those, the right kind of food for the probiotics. And then antibiotic is exactly what I mean. It's something that kills microbes, and it kills everything. And then you also have what we call like just dysbiotic or dysbiosis. Dysbiosis is when everything gets out of order, and you have too many of the bad microbes overpowering the good microbes. So, or we could call them dysbiotic. So antibiotics really killing everything, antibiotic, biotic relating to life, and then like dysbiotic meaning a disruption or out of balance. And homeostasis is when everything's in the right balance. And what's interesting about that microbiome is that the microbes actually create the environment for themselves that they best live in. So if you get into dysbiosis, the bad bacteria are producing an environment that is favorable to the bad bacteria and unfavorable to the good bacteria. So it's very hard for the good bacteria to come back into and establish themselves as the dominant player. Our product is foundational to helping to establish and create that good environment that will help not only do things directly itself, but create an environment that will now support these what we call keystone probiotics, which are lactobacillus and bifidobacteria. And then there's 1,000 other species of probiotic that should be living in our guts. But they need to be supported by this environment that's particularly created by lactobacillus. So we use the spore-forming probiotic Bacillus coagulans, which actually creates the lactate, the same thing lactobacillus creates, that helps to now establish the right pH in the lower intestine, that then everything else that's good flourishes in. So it's all intertwined and working together. And so if you think about the digestive system starting in the mouth and going through the stomach being the most acidic area, that acidity in the stomach is created by the stomach itself. And then we go through the small intestine, and the pH of the small intestine in a healthy system shifts back to closer, still slightly acidic, but closer to neutral pH. And then when you get to the lower intestine, a healthy lower intestine has a more acidic environment, not as acidic as the stomach, but a healthy lower intestine, large intestine, has a pH of around 5.5. But unlike the stomach, the pH in the lower intestine is actually created by the microbes themselves. So if you have bad microbes creating a higher pH environment, I'm sorry, I'll get it back. Yeah, like a more alkaline environment, a lower environment. Now you're supporting the bad microbes, so you need the good ones to create that environment. So you have this whole, you have this whole self-supporting system. But even what's more, if you really want to wrap your head around this, the large intestine. So the small intestine is like a very complex that has some microbes living in it,
Right.
but it produces enzymes and that sort of thing. But the lower intestine, the large intestine, is kind of like a dumb organ. It's there precisely to be a home to our probiotics. In other words, our probiotics and our microorganisms are so important to us, our health,
Right.
that we have an entire organ dedicated to being a home for those microbes in the large intestine.
So when the food is going through from your stomach, then into your upper intestine, then your lower intestine, it's still drawing nutrients out of it and still using it for energy. And these probiotics and prebiotics and everything are helping the acids that are breaking it down and helping it get it spent or sent to where it's supposed to go.
Yeah, at a very basic level. Yeah. So
I'm a very basic guy. So
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it's crazy how impactful the microbes are into breaking down nutrients and producing metabolites. So 95% of all the short chain fatty acids produced in our body is produced by the microbiome. The body itself, our bodies do not produce these short chain fatty acids at all. And about 5% we get from in the food that we eat. So these short chain fatty acids are essential nutrients for the cells and cellular metabolism, and they provide like 70% of the energy needs of the cells in the intestines. And then when we don't, and they're produced by probiotics, and if we don't have a healthy gut microbiome, we're not able to produce these metabolites that are short chain fatty acids, and therefore the cells struggle for energy, which then creates a lot of metabolic dysfunction in the cells in the intestines, also throughout the body. These short chain fatty acids also circulate through the body, which then now causes the cells not to function properly, which just starts to get into these things like leaky gut. So the cells start to lose their ability to have the proper junctions between them, and things get out of the gut into the rest of our body, where then we start to have autoimmune responses, which is where a lot of inflammatory and autoimmune disease starts to come from. It's from things that are supposed to stay in the gut getting out of the gut, and that has a lot to do with whether or not we have the proper microbes living in our gut to keep things functioning properly. But this also gets into all kinds of metabolites. So it's not only absorbing things from the food that we're eating and breaking them down, but it's also in the microbes actually, take the process of like fermentation. They're taking in this nutrients and breaking it down, but also they're also converting it into other important amino acids and peptides. Right. And other things that we need. So B vitamins, the microbes not only help us absorb vitamins from the food, but they actually manufacture B vitamins, make them. And they also make peptides. In fact, with our probiotic, there's clinical studies showing up to a 20% increase in protein utilization. That's because the microbes play a huge role in breaking down proteins. Our body does not absorb whole proteins. In fact, that has a lot to do with inflammatory response. So if we have a poor digestive system, we're in dysbiosis, so we get this double whammy effect. Now the cells aren't functioning properly, so things are leaking out of the gut that aren't supposed to. One of the worst ones to leak out of the gut are undigested proteins, because the immune system in the body sees proteins as invaders, big time invaders. And we create all this immune response to those undigested proteins that are supposed to be in the digestive system, still getting broken down. So by being in dysbiosis, we're allowing things to leak out like these undigested proteins, but secondly, too, we're also not breaking down the proteins and getting the amino acids and peptides from those proteins that are being broken down. That's how our body really uses these proteins, is once they're broken down. And there was this really recent study that's super great for backing up our theory on why to use an organic inulin fiber. That's what the microbes have always fed on. Also, other ones are like resistant starches are good ones too. If you want to add resistant starch or something, that's a good prebiotic also. But inulin fiber is a soluble fiber. This paper showed, inulin is a long chain of fructans that our body doesn't absorb or digest. But when the microbes feed on that inulin, they're feeding on the fructans, which is, think of the word fructose. And what this study showed was that the inulin fiber trains the microbes to also be able to digest sugars, especially fructose. And in this study, not only was it preventing fructose from getting all the way to the liver, it was getting broken down by the microbes that had been trained on eating the inulin, the fructans, to break down the fructose. So it was just right off the bat, it was preventing fructose from spilling over into the liver, which then they were showing that it was reducing the fatty liver disease, and it was increasing insulin sensitivity, which so helping with, a big problem with metabolic disease and that sort of thing. But It even got better. What was happening with the fructose that was getting broken down by the microbes, it was actually getting converted into these very important amino acids. So it was getting converted into glycine and serine, and which are really important to our healthy. So it was breaking fructose, something really bad like fructose, down into metabolites that were very useful and good. And it was also, in doing that, glycine is a precursor to glutathione. So we were at the liver was now actually producing, in these studies showing that it actually was now producing more glutathione, which the glutathione is the most powerful antioxidant the body produces to help regulate liver function and that kind of thing. So it was just this huge, benefit to our bodies to have the right kind of microbes, but the microbes relied on the right kind of prebiotic fiber in order for them to flourish. So you can see this really like a forest, like the Amazon. So Back in the days of Louis Pasteur, there was a competitor to Louis Pasteur, and they were just learning about germs and microorganisms. And Pasteur had like the bigger microphone, and he did great work. Obviously, pasteurization has been very beneficial. But at the time, Pasteur was like, we need to kill all the bacteria. They're all bad. And the other scientist was saying, no, it's more like a forest. Most of them are good or not hurting us. They're neutral, and only a few of them are bad. Right. And Pasteur kind of won the argument, except for Pasteur changed his position right at the end of his life. Most people don't know that. So there was a person saying, look, think of these microbes and microorganisms like the rainforest. Most of it's good. Most of it's needed. You wouldn't burn down the whole forest just to get rid of some poison ivy, or whatever.
Yeah, right.
So you just kind of think about your gut. We have 23,000 genes approximately that are our own in our chromosomes. We have 3 million genes from the microorganisms in our body, and they're all and we're being affected by all of them. And the microbes that live in our gut can be thought of as another organ. It's like, we've adapted this organ from the microbes, and we have a whole, like I said, the large intestine is there just to house them. And the appendix, people kind of wonder what, they used to always tell us in school that the appendix didn't have a purpose. It was, sort of like this leftover thing that we didn't need. But now they know, and that the appendix actually serves the role, it still does, of housing a safe haven for microbes in our gut. So if you think about our ancestors, got sick and they had a real heavy bout of diarrhea or whatever, which is a natural way for our bodies to flush things out of our, we're sick. I mean, it's doing that, it's trying to get rid of everything.
Yeah, getting rid of the poison.
Yeah. The appendix was there to house the microbes so that the microbiome could start to come back after being sick like that. And
why would appendix go bad then? It didn't house properly, so it was getting bad stuff in it. Is that why appendix go bad?
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, you could have the look. There's actually is a lot of interesting reading on appendix, and they're going back now, so that starting to shift back to holding off on appendectomy until it's really severe, because it wasn't that long ago. If you go back, they've been doing them, I forget how long now, but if you go back to the early days, there actually were people who said, look, we need to try and not just go right to cutting out the appendix, with somebody.
They took mine out, so.
yeah, and it's not to say that you shouldn't ever have them taken out or whatever, but again, it was another story where the one person who was sort of like the champion of the appendectomy kind of won the argument, but then now if you read, you can most appendicitis or actually you can actually recover from them, from using antibiotics and what they would do today, but even just through regulating like you would any other sickness, you heal from it. Now, I mean, what is the root cause of them? I mean, from what now I've read about it, it seems like it's like a lot of times it's like a fecal plug or something like that. It gets stuck there, and and then it gets infected inside of there because it's not flushing itself out or whatever.
Okay.
But generally speaking, there is now. If you look, you can look this up. That there's more of a movement to go back towards not just taking out the appendix at first. At first glance, looking at other ways to help, because the appendix does serve a role. But getting to the antibiotic thing, and we can see we get our microbiomes from our mothers. That's where we mostly get the colonizing microbes in our gut. They get passed on from generation to generation during birth, and during nursing. And so we see with people who have been born with cesareans or didn't nurse or had a heavy regimen of antibiotics when they were very little, they have a lifelong problem with diversity in their gut microbiome. But since it's generational, we've also seen from every generation since antibiotics became prevalently used, a reduction in the diversity of the microbiomes of people in the Western world. But it wasn't just antibiotics. It just happened to be at the same time antibiotics became used prevalently. We also had pesticides. It was all after like World War II, the industrialization after that. So pesticides and disinfectants, preservatives in our food, more processed foods. And then we kind of had GMOs and all these other things we started doing to our bodies. And you can see the microbiomes become more and more problematic, less and less diverse since that period of time. And they study indigenous people in parts of the world that haven't been exposed as much to these things, and they have microbiomes that are way more diverse than ours.
So this leads to a question I was going to ask you. I have a couple questions lined up, but the first one was, now with the advent of everybody's pushing probiotics and prebiotics, it's like the new health craze. Maybe it's not new, but it's newer to me anyway.
Yeah.
What did our parents and our grandparents, they didn't have these supplements, and is there any supplements that people are taking that might be detrimental to pre and probiotics? Like maybe you take too much zinc or too much D or too much A or something like that might wreck it. These are just, like, where did our parents get this stuff from? How can we get back to that? And is there something that can be destroying it that we shouldn't be doing?
Well, I mean, I would say firstly, look at the foods, the preservatives, these sorts of things. I mean, that's the first thing, probably the first thing to look at. Now, our parents, depending on how old you are, if you're like, looks like we're about the same age, probably. My dad, when he grew up, they still had a little farm and that sort of thing. And
yes,
and he was a little bit, my dad was born the year 41, the year World War II broke out. And he wasn't really exposed to probably as much at an early age as the generations that are being born today or been born in the last 30 years really have exposed to.
Right.
And so I think, he probably had a pretty strong gut, from that. But I would say that, even us, I've talked to people that are about our age who got a lot of antibiotics when they were young, and they've had terrible gut health problems ever since then. Same thing for preservatives. But now when I talk to young people, when I was 20 years old, you wouldn't really talk to people about digestive health issues. They might have talked about their parents.
I didn't hear about it till I was probably in my 30s or 40s, maybe.
Yeah, right. But now
it's very, very predominant. I mean, my wife and I take a very good probiotic and prebiotic. Obviously, we're going to have to try yours. I don't have a problem with that. Yeah. And I like putting stuff in my coffee, so that's even better. But, you talk about that. You're right. My parents and my grandparents always had a garden. Like, we grew up, every meal there was a salad made with fresh lettuce, fresh tomatoes, fresh peppers, radishes. They grew everything healthy, and it was grown in the backyard. Now, of course, we had to worry about DDT and all that stuff back when my dad was born in 33. So he might have been a little older than your dad. But, it was just, the stuff they used to spray on it, like they didn't even know asbestos was bad for them. So who knows what kind of chemicals they might have been putting on their fruit. But as far as I can remember, we always had a salad, fresh vegetables at every meal. And, I was telling my wife growing up, it's very interesting to look at what we eat now versus what we ate then. There was a salad, like they lived by the triangle. There was the grains, we had some sort of bread. There was salad, there was fresh vegetables, and there was a meat, a protein. So we the only thing we didn't have was cereal, obviously, at night, but right. That was a guarantee for dinner. And nowadays, everything's so bang, 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 quick, or, like I try and do a very high protein, low carb, lifestyle. Is there any of these, and I hate using the word diet fads, but diet phases that people are going through, the Mediterranean, the carnivore, is that ruining gut health, or is that helping it grow?
Well, I think you have to be a little bit careful with anything, and some of these things you can overdo them, right? They might be useful for a period of time. You have to listen to your own body. I mean, I think the Mediterranean diet is such a classical, historical diet. That's a little different things like saying going carnivore or whatnot. But with carnivore itself specifically, I can tell you that if you really want to get the most out of the proteins and things that you're eating, you have to have some sort of, basis for your microbiome to do that. A lot of people who are on carnivore diets eventually do have some digestive health issues. So they should be getting some fiber in with that. And for me personally, reading on these different subjects, I think that there's something to probably not like being full on carnivore for your whole life, but maybe using it as a period of time to help you adjust to something, and then try to work in what it is that you're missing and keep and eliminate what you're not, and which it goes also for the whole process of what they call like an elimination diet. That's a process of learning of what's going on in your body. And so I think those things can be helpful, but you definitely, if you're going to be like all-time carnivore, you can add, a soluble fiber to your diet to really help support the microbiome. Because I do think that,
I'll be the first to admit I've done carnivore and it shuts my system down. I don't digest properly. I get constipated. I need my fiber. I take a daily fiber, So if I'm taking probiotics and prebiotics, do I need to add a fiber supplement also, or should that be enough?
Well, it probably, if you're eating a balanced diet and you're adding some fiber to that, you're probably now getting enough. They say that, basically almost everybody on a Western diet is deficient in fiber, at least like 80% of people. But if you're supplementing the right kind of fiber, that's the thing, So there's soluble fibers, there's insoluble fibers, and there's many of the fibers that are sold on the market that really aren't the types of fibers that we would have in a natural diet. Psyllium husk is a husk of, you wouldn't naturally eat psyllium husk, for example, but it might do some people some good. I don't know. I know that wheat dextrins and corn dextrins are just super cheap fibers that are not fibers that we'd get in nature. You have to process corn or wheat to get the dextrin. It's not something we would get just from eating corn or wheat. So it's a processed fiber, and there's synthetic fibers, and then there's gums and things on the market that we wouldn't normally have in our diet. So who knows really what microbes really want to feed on those kinds of fibers, like whereas I'm saying like resistant starch, which is where you can get from like taking a baked potato and leaving it in the fridge overnight. It starts to the starch is kind of starting to bind in a way that creates a good prebiotic, but or a soluble fiber like inulin. That's
what do you think of the big phase? Everybody does it. It's kefir. I think that's how they say it, kefir, where they let the cultures grow overnight and then they eat it or drink it the next day, which I think is supposed to be really good for your gut. I don't know. I've never tried it.
Yeah, I think all of these things are good in theory. Now, with kefir, I'm not as familiar with what they have to do as far as, because it's a dairy product, it's pasteurizing it or not pasteurizing it. I do know that most of yogurts and those sorts of things, it's in theory a good idea, but when you buy something off the shelf, it has to be preserved or stored. So you're not going to get really much probiotics from those, or you also get a lot of sugars and those kinds of things as well. Now, there are some products on the market.
Sneak them in, calling them something else too.
Yeah, but if you make your own probiotic yogurt at home, which isn't
Right.
that hard to do, that's a good thing to do. And remember, these things aren't like one or the other. Like, I mean, if you're for our product, for example, Good Bro, I always tell people it's only going to help support any other probiotic that you're taking. You know, they're not. It's not like, you know, the probiotics are good. They're helping one another. So you're going to get benefits.
You
You
can't
know,
you can't overdose on them.
right. No, you can't over it. But we also don't really know, like the one thing I like about our product is that it's just a very foundational in helping support the environment that our colonizing microbes like to live in. I think it's very difficult to tell somebody, you take this certain special concoction of probiotics that's in a capsule, because this is the microbiome, your microbiome is as unique to you as your thumbprint is. So it's very, to me, that's a very like, oh, it's just a very difficult thing. It's to try and think that you can tell somebody what the special mixture of probiotics are that they need. But then on top of that, most of those don't survive on the shelf, and they don't survive through the stomach and the stomach acid. So I mean, I'm a much more believer in, like you're saying, about foods and like a product like ours that really supports the microbiome in general. So you're really helping to reestablish, you know, what Mother Nature gave us. But you said earlier, I wanted to mention this because you really early in the conversation you talked about gut and aging. So this is really interesting. It's just they're way back. I forget what period of time. It was 1800s, I assume. A guy recognized that these people in Bulgaria had these exceptionally long, healthy lifespans.
Right.
And he wasn't able to identify it. I forget what he chalked it up to, but he went and studied them, study their culture and everything. And then a while later, another group of researchers looked at his notes and said, oh, he identified this yogurt. This is something that they ate. And now at this point in time, they were like able to start thinking about microbes. And they did relate this specific strain of microbe that was in this yogurt. I think it was Lactobacillus helvetica. But these strains get really like there's a species, there's a strain, and then there's substrains. But this group of people in Bulgaria ate this yogurt every day, and these microbes were obviously really helping them with their lifespan and whatnot. But again, see, this is the same thing when they look at like these Greek communities that have these long lifespans, or the Sardinians. The Sardinians eat a goat cheese that they make every day. But see, they're making it with a certain special strain, and it's normal to their diet. It's like every day. So, you know, that's another thing in the Western world is, you know, well, we eat this one day and we eat this the next day. You know, are you doing something that's consistently the right thing in your diet every day? And we're just seeing these, you know, really high rates of colon cancers and things that are going on. And a lot of this is being related to the microbiome and how we've destroyed our microbiome. You know, with our product specifically, we get a lot of people. We didn't design it for any one specific thing. We have so many people who it's really helped them with like acid reflux or chronic constipation. Chronic constipation actually affects a huge percentage of the population. So does acid reflux. And there's other things too. But I think what that really I mean, we talk to people who are nurses. Like we have a lady who's a nurse. She runs a health fitness center. Her husband's a dentist, and she for like 20 years had a constipation problem, and she's super healthy. And she went to all these doctors, and then, you know, she started using our product, and it helped her. And now she sells our product at her store. But the point, I guess, with that is the same thing with acid reflux. So these things actually have long-term major health consequences for people. And the modern medical community doesn't really offer cures. They offer band-aids, you know, so take more of a laxative or this laxative or that laxative, or take a proton pump inhibitor or antacid, and they actually make the problem worse over time because they're not really fixing things, you know. And your stomach needs to be acidic. So if you're, you know, taking things that actually raise the alkalinity, you're not going to digest your food and things as well. And they're also going to create an environment that's more of a harbinger for the pathogens that maintain that problem. And it's not without, you know, it could be very debilitating and just mess with your lifestyle, but it leads to much more severe health issues over time as well. So fixing your gut microbiome is really a central part of your health. As you said at the beginning. It's maybe 100% of all of our health issues.
Right.
It's like that's how our immune system gets trained at a very early age, is from the microbiome. The immune system trains on the microbiome. The oral health. So when we have the same microbes that create bad oral health, now they see translocate to the lower intestine, and then either produce toxins or even make the microbes themselves make their way to the nervous system, and they're seen in a high number of people with Parkinson's disease or Alzheimer's disease. This dysbiosis as a precursor to these things, along with genetics and other things. But with some of the research with Parkinson's, for example, is that they see dysbiosis creating a problem with iron metabolism, and then that iron metabolism related to dysfunction in the brain. Alzheimer's, they're seeing like certain prevalencies of the toxins and microbes that are related to, like, say, gingivitis and cavities and these kinds of things getting into the nervous system and then creating an immune response. So people may be predisposed to, say, Alzheimer's, but you got to remember, it's still, even people with like the worst genetics for predisposition for Alzheimer's, there's still a large percentage of those people who never get Alzheimer's. And now they're even showing where they're doing, biopsies and things on people later that actually have a lot of the actual symptoms in the brain of Alzheimer's, but never actually showed the condition of Alzheimer's disease or dementia. So there's a lot going on in the body, and a lot of it does relate it back to the gut and a healthy gut, the gut microbiome.
Well, and there's so much we could dive into, but obviously, your time is important to us as our listeners. I want to know two things. This is why I'm a firm believer in this, and then I want you to talk where we can get your product. Okay, I want everybody to go out and order and get themselves a jug, get their gut healthy. This past summer, I had a really bad injury, and my hand got very, very much infected, and they were worried I was going to go septic from it. And they nuked me. I mean, that's basically the verbiage they use. They nuked me with antibiotics. And the doctor told me on a daily basis, when you get out of the hospital and you get back home, start taking a good probiotic and a prebiotic. He says, take double the amount because we're blowing everything out of your system right now, and you need to build that back up. And I found it very interesting that the doctor was telling me that, because I don't know about 10 years ago if he would have told me that. Because I don't remember ever being on an antibiotic where they told me, dude, you need to take a probiotic or a prebiotic because you're getting nuked right now. But they said, if you want your stomach to get back to normal, because you're going to be messed up for a little while. And so as soon as I got home, I doubled up on everything else. So I am a firm believer. I appreciate everything you've told us. We could probably talk for hours. What, where can our listeners and our anybody get your product?
Yeah, so the way to get it is goodbrew.com, spelled BRU. So it's goodbru.com. And we do have a discount code, give thanks. So if you use give thanks, it's both ways, give thanks, you'll get 10% off. So, and we already price our product very affordably because we do have people who really regularly use it, and we want to keep it that way so that they can reuse it. So goodbru.com. Give thanks. And remember, our product is a scoop. Unlike other probiotics and capsules, because you use a scoop, you can actually get a significant amount of fiber. You really can't get that from a capsule. They can't put enough prebiotic really in a capsule to be significant. So we use our product by the scoop. And because it's a spore-forming probiotic, it is well studied to survive the heat of coffee, plus, more importantly, your stomach. So you can put it in coffee. You can put it in other things. We have people put it in yogurt, water, whatever. But it's really convenient because you can't put it in your coffee. Start small. We use a 2 scoop. It's really like 2 level scoops, or maybe a scoop and a little less as a serving, but we have to do that. We have to have something on our nutritional label. I personally do use 2 scoops a day, but we have probably more customers that use just 1 scoop a day or something like that. So start small. Some people have to adjust when you start adding probiotics and prebiotics. And then find what works for you, and that might just be 1 scoop. And if you use just 1 scoop, these canisters will go a long ways. But even at 2 scoops, the large one is 75 servings of 2 scoops. So it's 100 about 150 scoops. Roughly. We don't make scoops.
If my wife used it, we'd be able to use it for a couple months.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
And
So
people get it on. Can people get it on a subscription base?
you can get it on a subscription base. Now, I will say that's fine. We do have a subscription, but what we usually see is a lot of people who will start with buying a medium or a large or whatever. We do even have a little small one. And they find that they like it, and then they'll order our 3-pack. We run different specials throughout the year, but we always have a 3-pack of the larges as a special. Give it a try. But I think people prefer that than the subscription because people use it at it's not like a pill where, I'm going to use 30 of these in a month, You just order it, and when you start to run low, then you reorder, and that's what I see a lot of.
And if they go to your website, they have any questions or anything, they can just reach out to y'all through there.
Yeah, just reach out to us through the website.
Excellent. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for your insightful information and helping us get our guts healthy again, which make our guts healthy again. There you go. You could start your own mugga or whatever it would be.
Yeah, that's it. Make our guts healthy again.
Make our guts healthy again. There you go. Anyway, I appreciate your time. And again, I'm Zach with EA Truth Radio, brought to you by internalaffairsmedia.com. Thank you for joining our show tonight. Our guest this evening was the insightful and very smart, spoke a little bit above my head there for a little while, but it's okay, Gabe Doe with Good Brew. Brew is BRU. And would that be goodbrew.com?
Yes,
goodbrew.com. So please subscribe, like, and share. And if you feel led to support our independent media ministry, you can pitch a donation at donate.eamedia.online. Visit us and read all of our content on our website at internalaffairsmedia.com. Again, thank you so very much, everybody out there. Yes, everybody out there. We'll see you guys soon, and God bless.
Yeah, God bless.
All right.
I built this business the old-fashioned way. Hard work and a whole lot of spreadsheets.
Yeah, about that, I upgraded us to Odoo. Odoo puts everything we need, sales, inventory, accounting, on one connected platform. No more juggling systems, no more headaches.
So it all works together?
Exactly.
Odoo is the all-in-one business software that makes running and passing on a business easier than ever. Take your business into the next generation. Try Odoo free at odoo.com. That's ODOO.com.